Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady. Today, we have two news stories waiting for us. And in this episode, you'll see first the story about Karen, who thinks that every person with a camera is a reporter, and the second story about Karen, who pretends to know the restaurant owner personally without realizing that she's talking to him now. But before we start, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Just because I have a film camera, I've been an LTR for a while and unashamedly but silently lamented to myself that I didn't have a story to tell. However, I was going through some of the greatest hits in the back catalog of this sub and was suddenly reminded of an incident from a couple of years ago that I'd somehow forgotten. It's admittedly pretty tame compared to some of the posts I've read on here, but I figured it's worthy enough to at least be shared. It's also been a while, and though the conversational bits may not be 100% accurate, they're as close as I can recall. Long ago, in another career of mine, I worked in the film industry. I started as an assistant film editor and eventually jumped unions to become a camera operator. During my illustrious camera op career, I began by filming local municipal town hall meetings. You don't realize how bloody boring those things are until you're forced to stand for hours at one looking at nothing but a tiny camera screen. Before making it big, aka lucking out through a coworker and getting a fairly decent position on a couple of major big-budget TV shows. I became jaded of the whole industry by the end and eventually left. However, one of the things that stuck with me was a desire to be behind a film camera and just film random stuff. Fast forward about 10 years. I'm working in another, much less glamorous industry, and I'm fully entrenched in my local car club's activities. We host 2 massive car shows every year, usually with hundreds, if not thousands of cars attending. It was also around this time that I finally decided to bite the bullet and invest in a new film camera for myself. It wasn't anything super fancy like a Red Scarlet, but it was still a several $1,000 unit and blurred the line between prosumer and professional. The lens hood, and focus rack setup I had on it made anyone unfamiliar with film cameras immediately think it was a much more expensive unit than it really was. That particular summer, our car club had decided to host our annual summer meet in a new location, and we were projecting the biggest turnout we'd ever had. I couldn't think of a better opportunity to take my new camera and try some new shots and angles I was wanting to get for my updated demo reel. Even though I'd spent many of the previous years helping to run the club, I still asked for approval and got it. No waiver forms were needed because it's technically on a public lot, even though it was a private event. So the day of the event comes and hundreds of cars start rolling in. I'm there early in the morning to help set up the event tents and to make sure the traffic control guys are working with the local PD to ensure minimal impact on local businesses. Things seem well in hand, so I go grab my camera and start filming anything that I deemed even remotely interesting. I eventually tire of static tripod shots and of slider angles, so I pop my camera off the head and start wandering around the meet. By this time, the event was in full swing and absolutely packed. Everyone's having a good time. There are challenges going on near one of the event tents, and people are generally milling about. I managed to get some good candid shots of people checking out engine bays, of funky-looking people and their equally funnily decked-out pets, and some super sweet classic cars that showed up. Eventually, I come across a group of friends hanging out near their cars so I can join up and start chatting with them. By now is probably a good time to describe what I look like. It's summertime. It's one of the rare heat waves this city gets, so I'm wearing my cargo shorts and an older t-shirt I got from working on a TV series. The back is emblazoned with Film Crew, while the front has a smaller font with the name of the series it belonged to. I also have a lanyard around my neck with a press pass that IDs me as a member of the car club. It's actually a legitimate company, so we have some clout with automakers for press car reviews, being used as experts on specific things in the local news, etc. However, that ID clearly states the car club's name and no other company. I wore it so the vendors who showed up at the meet would know that I'm an official member of the group, so I could have access into their tents and do some BTS shots. As I said, I'm standing there chatting with a bunch of friends, holding my camera in the rest position on my shoulder, and we're suddenly interrupted by a shrill sound behind me. Finally, the news decided to show up. One of my friends snorted and smirked at that comment. An NDA prevents me from going into any sort of specifics, but suffice to say, I'd previously worked for a news outlet for a short while and caught one of their field reporters gaming a certain segment he was doing. There was a legal kerfuffle that ended with me promising not to go public with the details. I know, but I was young at the time and didn't want to torpedo my film career. Suffice to say, I'm not the biggest fan of a certain news outlet, so being called out as one was a little amusing to me and that friend. I turn around and come almost nose to nose with an angry-looking woman. She'd clearly seen the film crew wording on the back of my shirt, and the quick glance she took at my press card lanyard seemed to pass as an official ID for some sort of news outlet. Of course, the camera in my hands probably would have given her that opinion regardless of whatever my shirt and lanyard said. I'm sure you're all familiar with the type by now. Me. Actually, lady, this is an abomination. The local police department and local city should never have allowed this disgusting congregation to have happened. I can't believe those police officers on the side streets are letting this go and not having everyone towed. Now, I'm a fairly reserved guy. I'm pretty quiet and don't usually do well with confrontation. At the time, I also didn't think quite so well on my feet, so I was having some trouble processing why this woman was ranting at me. Me out of a probably good 2,000 people in the immediate vicinity. My lack of response probably seemed like I was silently agreeing with her, so the lady started back up. Turn your camera on. You need to have me in your segment. I know everyone agrees with me, and I need to have you record my opinion. By now, my brain resembled a CFL bulb. Dim when first turned on, but slowly brightening to full output. She thought I was working for one of the local news outlets. Me. Sorry, I think there's been a miscommunication. I don't actually work for any news stations. Of course you do. Go on. I don't have all day. This eyesore of an event needs to go away. Like I said, I'm not a news reporter. I'm here to hang out with my friends, to enjoy myself, to get a few shots for my own use. With that, I started to turn around in a passive-aggressive attempt to ignore her and to resume chatting with my friends. This lady was having none of it, however. You're exactly what's wrong with the news today. Always wanting to show one side of a story and never the other. Always ignoring the real issues by sweeping it under the rug. Keep in mind this was long before the recent fake news crap that's seemingly prevalent in this area of the world. Anyway, I attempt to ignore her and try to strike up the conversation that had been so rudely interrupted. Me. So anyway, that H22 swap in the 7th Gen Accord has me wondering about... Suddenly I was falling backwards. My lanyard had been pulled up against my neck mid-sentence before snapping. Time slowed as I felt my camera, my expensive pride and joy, come loose from my hands as I instinctively tried to brace my fall. It was one of those moments of pure shock and fear that you never forget and will occasionally relive at the weirdest times. It's like a minor PTSD event. Not trying to demean those of you who have legit PTSD moments, just trying to find a relevant metaphor. Life suddenly went from 9,000 frames per second back to 24 frames per second, and I found myself lying on the ground. Thankfully, the quick actions of one of my friends resulted in catching my camera, so my immediate worry was quenched quickly. However, I then realized my neck was throbbing and put two and two together. I looked up at the woman who now has my lanyard hanging in her hands. WTF, woman? As I pull myself up, the lady starts again. You and your scummy news outlet deserve that. That's what you get for not considering the real plights people have and simply ignoring them. I'm going to get you fired, and nothing you can say will stop me from talking to your manager until you're out of a job. The pedantic in me wanted to tell her that news reporters have assignment editors, not managers, but I was starting to get angry. My friends were all too shocked at what had just happened to offer much help. Thankfully, my throat was pulsating just enough to get me snapped out of my usual meekness. For the last time, I do not work for a news outlet. Look at the GD lanyard and tell me what it says. She looked at it. Press pass. My name, car group name. I point at the giant banner hanging on top of the main event tent. And what does that banner say? Car group name. I think she's starting to get the picture. And what would you do if my friends and I took you to the tent just to the left of that banner? Her eyes look over and go bug-eyed. Our local police department sets up a display every year alongside our main tent, usually with something fancy or unique. One year they had one of their helicopters actually land and be used as their display. Another year they had their mobile command center attend. This year they were showing off some of the new high-speed pursuit vehicles they'd recently obtained. We had a very good relationship with the local police, I will say. Lady, I'm sorry. With that, she dropped my lanyard and all but fled through the crowd, never to be seen or heard from again. And after a half a dozen Motrins that night, I got my demo reel finished. And our second story. How do you know me? This happened way back when I worked at a pizza place. We did takeaways and delivery, and there were a few seats where customers could sit while they waited for their orders, but not eat at them. On this particular day, the owner, John, not his real name, and I were working at the store. My usual coworker had called in sick, so John was filling in. Halfway through the day, a Karen walked in. At first, everything was just peachy. Karen asked for takeaway, gave her order, paid, and I made it. When the pizza was cooked, Karen sat down and opened the box, obviously intending to eat it there. Now, John didn't allow customers to eat in the shop because we're not a restaurant and staff had a dozen things to do, which didn't include cleaning up messes left by customers. I was making an order for delivery, so John went to Karen. I was all ears, as you can imagine. Sorry, you can't eat here. How dare you? I know the owner personally, and he said I could eat here if I wanted to. Oh, really? How do you know me? Karen went red, closed the box, and left without saying a word. John and I cracked up with laughter. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.